On Saturday morning, a lone gunman broke into the day's events at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There is no ambiguity about his motives. Armed with a rifle and 3 handguns, he reportedly shouted, "All Jews must die," while claiming 11 lives. He said much the same to law enforcement upon his arrest, and he had a consistent social media history repeating his views. He had a hatred for these people. It grew in him over time, until one day he acted horrifically upon it. Unfortunately, Saturday was that day. The president was asked about the shooting en route to an Indiana conference, and he prompted some controversy when asked whether access to guns is to blame for this incident. Instead, Trump discussed security.
Mr. President, do you think you need to revisit gun laws?
Well, again, this has little to do with it. If you take a look, if they had protection inside, the results would have been far better. If they had some kind of a protection inside the temple, maybe it could have been a very much different situation.
And he's not wrong, at least about the lack of security at this specific target. Reports are this particular synagogue had no security personnel on site and doors were unlocked for Sabbath services. So I don't know how or why that statement was treated controversially, to be honest. People say it ignores the hate motive in this case, but the president spoke explicitly to that issue as well.
It's a terrible, terrible thing what's going on with hate in our country, frankly, and all over the world, and something has to be done.
There must be no tolerance for anti-Semitism in America or for any form of religious or racial hatred or prejudice.
Still, the mayor of Pittsburgh, Bill Peduto, took the opportunity to criticize the president's comments, appearing on Sunday morning's Meet the Press.
I belong to an organization, a bipartisan organization called Mayors Against Illegal Guns. I don't think that the answer to this problem is solved by having our synagogues, mosques, and churches filled with armed guards, or our schools filled with armed guards. I think we're dealing with an irrational person who acted irrationally, and trying to create laws around that is not the way that we should govern. We should try to stop irrational behavior from happening at the forefront, and not try to create laws around irrational behavior to continue.
Now look, I'm not trying to mock or to ridicule or to laugh or anything like that. This is a serious tragedy, and I hope the best for the mayor's city. But on the other hand, giving him a blank check to push what I believe are incredibly naive ideas as supposed solutions in the aftermath is also an improper response. And his statement there reveals a very broad philosophical gap in how people look at this issue. Consider what he said there. That we shouldn't accept a world in which crazy is a given, that somehow we can correct what he calls irrational behavior with law or some other mechanism to control it. That is an entirely unrealistic utopian perspective. Oh, wouldn't it be great if we just eradicated all the crazy in the world? Yeah, good luck with that. I hope you get it done. And maybe afterward you can eradicate gravity too, but in the meantime, I'll prepare for the worst, not the best. Mayor Peduto again appeared on Monday morning Today Show with additional criticism for people who think maybe a little defense might be a solid strategy against senseless attacks.
The idea that synagogues should have armed guards and daycares should have armed guards in order to protect themselves, what type of society is that? Why not just live in a prison? We want to live in an open society where you don't need guns to protect yourself from people who want to murder in order to express hatred. It's a very simple idea and concept. It's the way the rest of the Western world lives day by day.
Is that actually the way the rest of the Western world lives, though? Is it how they lived in France in 2012 when 4 Jews were shot and killed by Islamic attackers? Or 2014 in Brussels under identical circumstances? How about Paris in 2015 in the aftermath of the Charlie Hebdo attack, when ISIS militants killed 4 more Jews at a kosher supermarket? It happened again in Paris in 2017 and 2018. It happened again in Amsterdam in 2017. It happened again in Berlin in April when a non-Jewish man put on a yarmulke to prove how safe it is, only to be attacked for wearing the yarmulke. So when the mayor says his vision of a violence-free world where there is no hate or aggression is a very simple concept, I don't actually know what he means. That is a concept that is not of this world. As far as I'm aware, it has never existed in this world. The mayor has sort of a curious wager for people who do believe that a little security might be part of the solution to this issue.
This idea that we just need to arm ourselves and everyone needs to have a gun. Great. You know what? Those elected officials that believe so, let's do it. And in 2 years, if the homicide rate's gone up, then you go to prison. You go to prison for homicide. And I'll tell you what, I'll work on my idea of how we work together as a society to build a better society. And in 2 years, if the homicide rate has gone up, I'll go to prison.
I mean, I'll take that bet, Mr. Mayor. If you're serious, let's get the paperwork done. But if you believe the data, most likely it'll actually just be a push. There's no observable relationship between gun ownership rates and homicide rates. This chart compares rates of gun ownership across states in 2013 to gun homicide rates in those states. As you can see, the line of best fit is in fact a very poor fit, meaning gun ownership is a poor predictor of gun murder. But if anything, the data actually show an inverse correlation, meaning more gun ownership has a very weak association with less gun murder. You can see states on the right end of this chart like West Virginia, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, and North Dakota, where guns probably outnumber people. These states have very few gun murders to speak of. And on the left-hand side of the chart, you have states with less gun ownership and more restrictive laws like California, New Jersey, Maryland, Illinois, and even the mayor's home state of Pennsylvania, where gun murder is in fact more frequent. Now, I'm not suggesting that more gun ownership necessarily means less gun murder. There are infinite variables to control for in that analysis, but what I am saying is that the mayor's case is very flimsy. But regardless, I don't like the premise of this argument. I don't think it's the rate of murder that should be our goal in this scenario. I think ensuring each individual can adequately defend his or her life and property in each individual scenario is the appropriate goal. What the mayor is advocating necessarily puts good people at the mercy of others. And while that can work as long as everyone around you is also good and merciful, all it takes is one person who isn't to make you helpless. So it's not even really about guns as the mayor wants to spin it. It's about the responsibility of good people to protect themselves against the ideally rare threat against them. And that threat could be armed with a gun, but not necessarily. Let's say your gun-free world is realized, Mr. Mayor. Does that actually solve anything if the good people at that synagogue are still defenseless? Let's say the attacker can't get a gun. Let's say guns don't even exist. Tell me what happens when that same attacker breaks into that same synagogue armed with a blade. How would the elderly he victimized defend themselves against that weapon? Or a baseball bat? Or even his fists? The point is, that was an unfair fight from the start, and the only way to equalize that fight is to have an option that can neutralize the attacker. And I do agree with the mayor that ideally that great equalizer is never necessary. I do want to live in the culture he describes where this type of attack is incredibly rare, if not absent altogether. But I don't know why he treats those two approaches, security and cultural repair, as mutually exclusive, as though you can only pick one. You shouldn't be for security. You should be for a society in which security isn't even necessary. We're saying security is part of a solution, and a crucial part. We're saying let's be prepared for a worst-case scenario first, and then work on minimizing those worst-case scenarios later.
This has got to end. Sensible, common sense people understand this has got to end. No more of that.
Correct, but people who want more security at that synagogue also want these types of attacks to be minimized. I hate when the issue is framed this way. Agree with me, or you want more bad things to happen. No, we all want less of that scene behind you. We just disagree on the best and most realistic methods to pursue that goal. I could argue just as credibly, probably more credibly, the same way against you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, you just want old Jewish people to be defenseless against attack. I believe you are genuine in your desire for less of this senselessness. The rest of us ask the same from you in return. For a guy who insists that compassion and love are the number one solutions here.
First part you do is by love and compassion. And those words should never be belittled. The cities in this country should be a city in a country of compassion. and we should be a society of love.
Perhaps assuming good intentions from people who disagree with you might be a good place to start. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel always. Appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Twitter, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to come hang out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.